I picked up this number 3 Type 7 some short time ago, and the Type 7s were 1893 to 1899. And the first thing you probably notice is that the cam on the cam lever cap doesn't look original. Some creative person milled this piece out of looks like a piece of bronze to act as a cam lever, which I think was pretty resourceful. My goal is to try to replace this with a more appropriate cam lever. I had an old number 4. This was I think from a Type 10, and the bottom here is all chowdered up. Looks like somebody used it as a screwdriver one too many times. There's a pretty good chunk taken out there, pretty good chunk taken out there. Other than that, it's in good shape, and the cam lever is intact. So I went out to the Facebook group, Just Plain Fun, and MJ hooked me up with a replacement for my number 4. And if you hold these two side by side, you'll see they're pretty much identical. Flip them over, and they look the same. And the cam lever on this is the shorter design. I have this lever cap from a Type 15. This comes off a number 5. And if I hold the two side by side, the newer one is decidedly longer by about 1/8 of an inch. And I don't know when the longer ones came in, but it was after these guys. So the guys at Just Plain Fun also warned me that you can't just tap this pin out. I'm under the impression they're probably peened over at the factory, and then when they go to smooth these sides, they just ground it all flush. And I don't care so much if I ruin this cam lever cap, as long as I don't ruin the lever itself, which I don't think is likely. But the technique is to drill out some amount of the pin, and if you can drill it out, you can relieve the pressure there, and then hopefully it'll tap out a little easier. And on this one, I thought about if I could just cut it out, because I don't care so much about this piece of bronze, but I don't want to chowder up this tongue spring here. And I certainly don't want to chowder up the actual cam lever cap itself. This pin looks like it was peened over pretty well, which I did try tapping that with a punch kind of gently. It didn't want to move at all, so I think I'm going to try doing a little drilling on this guy as well. We'll see how much luck I have on this guy first. And the tricky part is, how do you support it? When you're using a drill press, you have a huge mechanical advantage. You can put a lot of pressure on the point you're drilling on, and you can support the back of the pin if you're holding it this way, for example. If you're on the pin itself, I guess that's okay, but you just worry that you might put a stress on the cam lever and break it. And again, not so much for this guy, but this guy. This is the one I care about. The other thing I noticed when I was looking at this, it's not symmetric. This cheek here where it was ground seems to encroach much more on the face than the equivalent over on this side. And up here, this corner seems more rounded over than this corner. And it could have been this had been modified by some previous owner. Maybe there was a chunk taken out, lever cap here, that was smoothed away. I don't know. Or maybe at the factory, the Stanley employees just didn't care that much. Maybe it was all done by hand, and as long as it looked good from a distance, that was fine. I'd be curious to know if anybody has any knowledge to leave a comment. Let me know. I'd appreciate it. As I look at this newer cap, it looks a lot more symmetric. This is the chowdered up one that I was telling you about. It does seem a little bit less than perfect. There's kind of an inflection point as you come around here, right about here on this side. And on this side it seems to sit a little bit lower, but this one obviously looks a heck of a lot more symmetric than this guy. So here is the setup, and this is a piece of steel that's bridging from one jaw to the other. And on this side, I've got a couple pieces of PVC clamping it. I didn't want to put too much pressure on the cast. I got a washer in here to shim it, to try to lean it a little further over like that, because it wasn't quite so plumb. And I used a square like so to try to say, yeah, that looks plumb, and I put it on the table. Then the only other issue is to try to get it so that it's not leaning this way. And how I did that was I marked a center line, and then I just kind of eyeballed it with the square by sighting along this edge. And I discovered that this face didn't seem to be parallel with the center line. So, none of this is necessarily precision machined. When the lever cap is in use, the only parts that are touching are up here by the chip breaker and back here by the cam lever, and it's using the screw as a fulcrum. So really nothing on this has to be terribly precise. Well, here's the aftermath of my pulling the pins. I guess you're always better off to be lucky than good. This pin I pretty much drilled straight through the center, and once you drill a hole through it, you're able to punch it out. I used an old drill bit as a punch because it was pretty close to the correct diameter. I don't care so much about the body of this guy, but I do have the lever, and this was the one I cared about, and I drilled that out and using the same technique. And there's the homemade cam, kind of cool. And the idea is to marry this lever to this lever cap and try to get them the same color, and we should be good to go. I have this framing nail. It's pretty beefy and it's pretty close to the correct diameter. Can't quite get it in, but I think if I just remove a little bit of metal, that'll be my best bet. Well, I measured the diameter of the nail and it came out around 158 thousandths. I measured the diameter of the pin that I punched out of the lever cap. Came out around 156 to 157. And I've spent a little bit of time just filing. And then I hit it with 220 sandpaper and then 600 sandpaper that's worn. And here's the pin installed. The lever is in the lever cap. I just need to trim these down to size and swage it over and smooth it up. You can see the new cam lever, slightly different color than the lever cap. This kind of has a purplish, so the gun bluing is mixing with a little bit of red rust oxide, giving it kind of a purplish hue. This is definitely more of a gray, colorless patina. It has a 120 grit belt in it that's very, very worn. Looks like I nicked a little bit of the lever there. And that guy, I just took away the pin and a little bit of the surrounding patina to make sure I had it flush. This side was a little trickier. It's kind of a funnier shape. And I took a little more off. I had a scratch mark in here from where I scratched it with the wrench. But it's looking good. You can't feel it. You can just see the outline of it if the light catches it right. Now it's time to get the patina to look a little better, and this puppy will be done. Well, I didn't detail how I put the patina on this piece because I've gone into a fair amount of detail in other videos. Essentially, you induce a red rust on it, and then you put it in a relatively high heat, low oxygen environment, typically boiling, and some of the red rust, which is hematite, transforms into magnetite, which is the gray rust. The whole pass, inducing the rust is very quick, a couple minutes, and you boil it for several minutes after that, and then you wipe off the loose stuff with gently abrading. The whole process takes about 15 minutes, but you have to do it maybe 8 to 12 times or so, and every time you do it, it gets a little bit darker. I brought this outside. Hopefully it'll show on the camera because it's really subtle. But if you look at the lever up here, there's an area over here and a small area here, up here, and at the very tip. Ever so slightly more brownish reddish, where this middle area is really a deep, deep blue. And when I started this adventure a couple hours ago, this entire lever was this orangey, reddish, brownish color. So I am making progress. It's kind of going slow. Let's see if any of this will show up on the camera. And the two sides have darkened up nicely. I don't think anybody would be able to tell that just a couple hours ago this was polished, nice and shiny on both sides. Well, here's the lever cap. It's been treated, I don't know, 10 or 12 times. I treated it with the solution and boiled it. Still got a few specks of red or orange rust on the lever itself. I think I've had about as much fun on this project. If you look at the two pins, I don't think anybody would be able to tell that those were shiny smooth just a few hours ago. I don't think anybody looking at this lever cap would say, gee, it looks like the lever was attached just this morning. So I'm pretty pleased. I just need to oil it, and tomorrow I'll clean it up and see how it looks. And for reference, this was the original cap that it came off of. Again, you can see there's definitely notes of a dark brown in here, where on this guy it's much more a gunmetal blue. So I put this in the category of success. Well, and here it is with a coat of oil on it, and I think it looks great. It looks decidedly a shade darker than I remembered a couple days ago, but looking good. On this side you can barely see the pin. On this side the patina just wasn't cooperating quite as much. Slight discoloration on it. And the lever itself is pretty much the exact same color as the cab. I think it looks pretty sweet. And this ended up just beautiful. It's really nice and dark. This looks like it's 100 years old and has been reasonably well taken care of. Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I appreciate you all coming by my shop, hopefully getting something out of the videos that I present. It takes time to do them, as you know, but feel free to leave a comment, give me a little feedback, let me know things you'd like to see, things I'm explaining well or otherwise, and look forward to seeing you all on the next one.